Air India is now halfway through its ambitious transformation program, and we find out how it's really going. The 5-year roadmap, named Vihaan.AI, meaning New Dawn in Sanskrit, is all about reinventing the airline into a modern airline that India can be proud of, and sparking what they hope will be a new golden era. 2 key stages, taxi and takeoff, are already in the rearview. Now, Air India has entered the climb phase. This has been a requested video by a lot of you guys to clear up the refresh rather than refurbishment phase of Air India redeveloping itself under its new owners. Okay, let's be honest. You don't need to dig deep to understand why this reboot is so necessary. A quick scroll online reveals wave after wave of passenger complaints. Outdated planes, long delays, spotty service. It's not exactly the image of a flag carrier. In CEO Campbell Wilson's own words, Air India had spent the last 4 decades in terminal decline. Wilson, who came in from Singapore Airlines and Scoot, paints a brutally honest picture of the past. But it wasn't always this way. In its early years, Air India was a trailblazer. Founded in 1932 by J.R.D. Tata, a pioneer aviator and scion of the Tata industrial dynasty. Originally known as Qatar Airlines, it was nationalized in 1953 and renamed Air India. In 1962, it proudly became the first airline in the world to operate an all-jet fleet. J.R.D. Tata stayed on as chairman until 1977. Air India was his passion project, and under his leadership it thrived. In the 1970s, it introduced its iconic Boeing 747 fleet, dubbed Your Palace in the Sky, complete with lavish interiors, Indian-inspired motifs, and even a first-class cocktail lounge, the Maharaja Room, on the upper deck. It was peak glamour. But then came turbulence. The 1990s and early 2000s marked the airline's decline into mediocrity, plagued by inefficiency and missed opportunities. While India's economy surged, Air India lagged behind, losing ground to Gulf carriers like Emirates, Etihad, and Qatar Airways. As Wilson puts it, aviation had been seen as the preserve of the rich, and so it was a luxury to be taxed. The result? The airline descended into a little bit of an embarrassment. He doesn't hold back. The old Air India didn't really have job descriptions, didn't have performance management, didn't have rewards for doing well or consequences for not doing well. Promotion was based on tenure, not talent. The systems were archaic if they even existed. Most of the time, it was manual. There was no culture of planning in advance, if it was even reactionary. In fact, there was even a perverse incentive to not plan and react, because if you could fix the crisis, you could claim credit for fixing a crisis. And so that's just the absolute antithesis of what a good airline should be. By the mid-2000s teens, it was clear something had to give. The government's stance shifted. Aviation was now seen as a strategic enabler of economic and social growth. Privatization became the path forward. Initially, the government tried to sell a majority stake while holding on to some ownership, but when that didn't work, they sold the whole airline outright. In 2022, Tata Sons reacquired Air India in a historic homecoming, with Singapore Airlines coming on board too, now holding just over 25% of the revamped airline. Since then, Wilson and his team have been sprinting toward transformation. Still, there's plenty of skepticism. People still hesitant to fly with them, likely influenced by viral clips of onboard chaos. That said, half the fleet now boasts upgraded cabins, mostly on shorter routes for now. There's a slick new app and website, fresh catering contracts, and noticeable service improvements. Given that privatization only happened in 2022, the pace of change has been pretty impressive. But explaining this transformation to the wider world, that's been tough. You haven't seen a splashy global ad campaign yet. That's deliberate. In fact, this marks the first time Air India has brought in UK and US media to tour its Delhi hub and try the new product. For now, it's all about setting realistic expectations. Where we don't offer the latest proposition, we sell on value. That will change. It'll be another couple of years before our fleet is consistently upgraded. So, until then, we are ring-fencing Heathrow, Delhi, and Mumbai with a good product, New York, Singapore, Frankfurt, and presenting the new Air India to those markets. And then, not really overselling ourselves elsewhere. But the catering, the crew, the website, that's consistent. So more and more, it is just going to be the physical aircraft product. That is going to be the inconsistency. And as I say, 3 or 4 aircraft every month are going to pop out with the new product, so the portion that is anomalous is going to get progressively smaller. But that's the biggest frustration, that we want to talk about the new aircraft, new Air India, but we have to be patient. Transformation takes time, especially in an industry still reeling from post-COVID supply chain woes. Air India has placed a mega order for 570 aircraft from Airbus and Boeing, the biggest ever by a single airline, but delays are ongoing. My biggest challenge is the harmonization of the product across the field. It's not a challenge that we face on our own, because the supply chain constraints, whether it's on delivery of new aircraft or the delivery of seats to retrofit old aircraft, is still gummed up after COVID. We had intended to start our wide-body retrofit program of the Boeing 777s and the 787s last year. We actually committed $400 million to the task, and we selected the seats back in 2022. But because of the constraints in seat supply, both programs only start next month. So it will be another 2 years or so before we work through the whole fleet to upgrade. Wilson envisions Air India eventually matching the scale of major US or Chinese carriers. India is a growing market. It's growing like 7 to 8% a year. It's, in our view, grossly underserved by indigenous air traffic supply. We see the opportunity for double-digit compound annual growth rate for foreseeable future. If you look at what Boeing and Airbus forecast, they think the same. So, 570 aircraft, in our view, is a start. Now, if you look at similar geographies within China or North America, for some of the large airlines, they're nearing 1,000 or even more aircraft. And that's not to say that's what we will ultimately be that big, but the characteristics are similar. And where will all these planes go? The UK is at the top of the list. After the US, it's Air India's second most important market. Cirium data shows British Airways and Virgin Atlantic together operate more than 200 extra flights to India than Air India does. The UK, for historical reasons, the size of the diaspora, the size of the economic links, is clearly a strong number 2, and we've put a lot of new capacity into the UK since privatisation. Essentially doubled, if not slightly more, and it's also no coincidence that that's where we're putting our flagship aircraft. We are only scratching the surface, really, of the opportunity that is present between the two countries, because at the moment, we only connect Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore with Heathrow. We have a number of services into Gatwick from secondary cities, but you could probably double the number of city pairs that we operate. And that's before you really consider the likes of Kolkata, Hyderabad, Chennai, Manchester, more into Birmingham. There's really a huge opportunity that we want to be able to attack, and the constraining factor is access to aircraft. On board, there's more change coming. The fancy new business class seats you'll find on the airline's A350s. Those were originally made for Aeroflot but ended up undelivered due to sanctions after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Air India snapped them up quickly. Going forward, though, Air India will install 2 brand new seat types. We're using a whole bunch of different seats. On the 787, it's the Saffron Unity, whilst on the 777s, it's one from Recaro. Why 2 styles? For the 777s, the main mission is North America, which is a longer flight. So the dimensions, the orientation, the characteristics of the seat for ultra-long-range flying, we felt things would be slightly different than Europe or Australia, which we would consider more medium haul in our context. And yes, first class is sticking around. We see a place for first class. It's a niche product, but it's also a flagship. So I think we see a place for it in the future. New first-class suites will debut on incoming A350-1000s. 34 of which are on order. Not all of them will have first, though. Some will come in different configurations. A bespoke first-class seat takes about 7 years to conceptualize, design, produce, certify. We are getting some aircraft rather sooner. What do you guys make of their plans? Can they deliver it in time before their target market goes elsewhere? Will it be a success? Leave a comment below and stay with us for more updates. Subscribe and be sure to follow us on social media for the latest aviation news.